Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mo again. Well, in this section, we're going to be working with Active Directory sites and services. Now, what is Active Directory sites and services? Think about a site as a physical location for the company. What I have over here is actually four domain controllers. Why? Look at this. First of all, I have NYDC1, right? So let me just minimize all of these and show you what I got actually over here. So I have NYDC1, NYDC2, CTDC1, CTDC2. I am assuming we have a company that has two physical locations, one in New York and one in Connecticut. And each location has two domain controllers. So how can I manage replication through Active Directory sites and services? My first step is to set up the domain controllers. So watch this. Let me just go to NYDC1. Let me look at a full screen. Let me just log on to it and show you. The first thing I want to actually do is change the computer names, set up IP addresses, right, on each one of them because each physical location is going to be on a different network. So let's say, let me go back over here. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the actual server name. So I'm going to call this NYDC1, right? Of course, leave it as a work group. And the domain name is udemy.local. So now I have a fully qualified domain name. Then OK, right? All the way through. Give it a moment. And then, of course, we'll be setting up IP addresses. So that's NYDC1. I'm going to go to NYDC2 and do the same thing. This is going to be called NYDC2, right? So let's see. And let's wait for server manager. So the first thing I want to do is change computer names and set up IP addresses. And let's change this NYDC2, all right? And of course, udemy.local, then OK, all the way through. Give it a few seconds. Should be coming up. All right, there we go. OK, close and restart. And same thing, I'm going to go to the rest of them. CT, right? Assuming that this is in Connecticut, all right? So we're going to be changing the computer name of this one as well. Let me also log on to the second DC on CT and put the password. So there you go, right over here. We're going to change this to CTDC1, right? This is CTDC1. That's the name of this actual server. So CTDC1. And right over here is going to be udemy.local. So that's a fully qualified domain name, as you see. Preparing for the actual domain. The beginning, I'm going to put all of them on the same network, okay? And then we'll be changing that. You'll see why. And let me go to this one over here and change the computer name to CTDC2. CTDC2. Then okay, close and restart. All right, cool. Now, let me go back to NYDC1, log on to it. The first thing I like to do is give it a static IP address. It's an actual server. So I want to change the IP address itself. See how this works out. Then local server. Go to the network settings. And let me see what number I got over here. I got 223.151. All right, so I'm going to put that in statically. 223.151. All right, that's what I got from my wireless router. 223.151. And the gateway to go online is 223.2. And my DNS will be pointing to itself, 151. Then OK, then OK, then close. Let's minimize this. Let me go to actually NY, all right, DC2. Do them one at a time. And let's log on. So the DNS for all of them is 151 at the beginning, right? I'm just going to have one DNS server, as you see. And then we'll see what we're going to be doing with that. But first, I'm just preparing for the actual installation. Let me go to local server and take a look at the network settings right over here. Status, details, 152. Just wanted to verify. So it's like the next one in the list, not using version 6. And let me go back, 192.168.223.152. Of course, the default gateway is 223.2, and DNS is pointing to server 1, which is 151, right? Let me go to CTDC1. Probably it's 153. All right, let's see. Let's see what number we actually have over here. Local server. Go to the network settings. And let's see the IP address on this box over here. 223.153. All right. The next one, 223.153. 192.168.223.153. Gateway is 223.2, and DNS is pointing to server 1, which is 151. Then OK, then close. And let's go ahead and do the same thing on the last domain controller. And this should be the next available number, but let's verify that. All right. Next available number. So let's check. Status, details, 223.154. 223.154 looks like the numlock. All right. 223.154. 223.2. 223.151. All right. There we go. Okay, this looks good. So our next step is to install DNS, right? I need to install DNS at least on server 1, just one server. Then after that, we'll be installing Active Directory domain services. So that's enough for this lecture. We'll continue with our next lecture, working with DNS, then Active Directory domain services. So we'll see you guys soon. All right, everyone. Bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mo again. So in this section, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing and configuring DNS on the first server only. Remember, server 2, 3, and 4 are actually pointing to server 1. So let me go back to server 1. I'm going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features. Next, 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 right? We've been doing this a lot, all right? And I'm going to put a check mark in DNS and continue the installation. My next step after installing DNS, I want to configure DNS. I have to create a zone for udemy.local, right? So I'm preparing for the installation of Active Directory. So my first job is to make sure DNS is configured properly. Remember when we didn't configure DNS properly? Remember the trouble that we actually had? So always the best thing to do is install and configure DNS before you load Active Directory domain services, before you think about promoting, right, the server to a domain controller. So that's what I'm actually doing right now. So we need to create a forward lookup zone, right, for udemy.local. And that's what I'm going to do. So let's give it a few more seconds for this to finish up. And we'll see later on how we can have it on second server, third, and fourth. But for now, every server is actually pointing to DC1, right? So the DNS is pointing to DC1 as you see. So let's give this a moment. Almost there. And let's see. All right. Remember, when it actually installs it, this is like the RSAT, right? Which is means I could manage it under tools when I see DNS in the actual console itself. And don't forget, we always have to change the suffix, right? So it depends when we create the zone. So let me close this. cancel, tools, and then DNS. Let me expand. Forward lookup zone, right? Udemy.local. So udemy.local is the name of the domain and allow for dynamic updates. There we go. So DNS is installed and what? Configured. My next step is to what? To install Active Directory domain service. So my next lecture, we're going to be installing Active Directory domain services on all four servers. So we'll see you folks soon. All right, everyone. Bye for now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mo again. So in this lecture, what we're going to be doing is installing Active Directory domain services on all four servers. All right. We're preparing for the promotion of Active Directory. So watch this. I'm going to go to Manage, add roles and features, next, 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 and put a check mark in Active Directory domain services. And I'm going to do it on each one of them. Right. So let me go to NYDC2 and do the same thing. So we're just preparing for the installation of Active Directory. Let's put a check mark in Active Directory domain services and all the way through. Same thing, CTDC1, all right. Add roles and features and Active Directory domain services. And all the way through. And then, of course, CTDC2. See, the more you repeat this, the more you work on these, you get adjust to it more and more. All right. It becomes much easier to work with. So let me just put a check mark in domain services, and there we go. Let's go back to the first server. So I just want to make sure that Active Directory domain services is actually installed on each server. Why? In our next lecture, we're going to be promoting server 1 to a domain controller. And then we're going to make server 2, server 3, server 4 as additional domain controllers, which means they will be replicas, right? So we're going to have two actual sites. Every site will have two domain controllers. And I want to see how I could manage replication from one site to another. We will be discussing a GC again, a DC. There'll be new terms like what is a bridgehead server, what is an actual site link, what is a site link bridge, what is a subnet. There's lots of terms that we're going to be actually looking into, right? So that's something we're going to see. Let me take a look and see my other servers. There you go. Just making sure that this actually finishes on each server. Let's give it a moment. And as long as it's actually installing, yes. So this is a good sign. See, I have four servers now. I mean, yes, with 16 gigs, you could lower up the RAM. It'll probably be a little bit slow, but at least you have to have four servers for this lab, I would say so. And you'll see why. I cannot say two. It will defeat the purpose. So the more we go through this, you'll understand why I actually need four servers. So let's see, making sure that it's actually running on each one of them. All right. So it's in the process of finishing. So this, let me just close this out. And there you go. This one finished. Let me minimize. This one finished too. All right. So this is only one left. I just want to verify that it's all the roles actually there. Okay, good. So what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be promoting server 1 to a domain controller, right? So watch this. So I'm going to go back to DC1 and promote server 1 to a domain controller. So I'm going to say what here? Add a new forest, right? Which is what? Udemy.local, right? Udemy.local. That's my first domain, which is the first forest. And of course, DNS is there. I'm going to leave it with a global catalog server, and I'm going to put the password. Remember, this is a DSRM password, right? To recover Active Directory. Next, next, and all the way through. Let's give it a moment. It wants to make sure nobody else has Udemy on the network, right? And let's go next and give it a few seconds. It's going to check if I'm missing anything, but I did everything properly, so I should be able to click on the install button. There you go. Okay, this will take a while. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to actually pause the video for a few seconds, a minute or a few minutes, all right? And we'll come back soon. All right, it's back to the log on screen. It actually restarted. Now, actually, let me just go ahead and log on and show you. So Udemy/administrator. So this is my first domain controller. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the second, third, and fourth and make them as additional domain controllers, right? So watch this. Let me go to my second one, promote, and look at the option I'm going to choose. Add a domain controller to an existing domain. See this? This option right over here, right? Udemy.local. And I'm going to change. I'm going to put Udemy/administrator and the password. Then I'm going to go next all the way through. So this is a replica. And look at this. It's talking about DNS itself. I'm not going to put DNS and I'm not going to make it as a GC. All right. So you'll see why. So I'm removing all these and the site is still default first site name because I'm going to do that under Active Directory sites and services. Next, replicate from any. I only have one. All right. So I'm going to leave it as any, next, and all the way through. And install. Then I'm going to go to the other domain controllers, right? Let's take a look and see CTDC1, promote, add a domain controller to an existing domain, right? And same thing, Udemy.local and change. And of course, Udemy/administrator. I need actually domain admin rights to set this up and continue. Next. Same thing. I'm not putting DNS or global catalog. And let me put the password and next and any domain controller, next, and install. Let's give it a few moments and install. And same thing, we're going to go to CTDC2 and promote the server to a domain controller. Same thing. This is the last one, all right? Udemy.local. I'm going to click on change, Udemy/administrator, and put the password. Go next. Same thing. I'm going to remove DNS, global catalog for now. We're going to be doing this later, and you'll see through sites and services. And let me put the password and confirm. All right, next. It looks like I didn't put the right password. All right, let's see. And next. Okay. Any domain controller, next, and let's click on install. There we go. All right, so this looks good. Okay, let me just take a look. So this one is still, this one is restarted. It finished. That's a good sign, all right? This one restarted. It finished. See, it doesn't take long. And this one is about to finish up. I don't have anything on the database of Active Directory, right? I'm just setting up replicas. There's no OUs, there's no users, there's no groups, there's no computers, right? So that's why it's kind of fast. That's why it's actually running smooth right now. So the other servers are actually reaching the logon screen. I'm just going to pause the video for a few seconds, a minute or two. It looks like it's restarting. Probably I don't need to. See that? Now it's restarting. So this is actually all finished. So I was able to finish all of them. If I go back, let me just show you. When I go back to my first server and I go to tools, Active Directory users and computers, remember this? This is where I go. And let me check. Let me look at a full screen actually. And let me check over here under my domain controls. I should have 4. There you go. Look, I only have one GC. The rest of them are all DC. So this is actually good. That's what I wanted to show you. My next lecture, what we're going to be looking at is the actual console of Active Directory sites and services. So we're going to be introducing that console. We're going to look at it in more and more details. All right. So it's what we actually did in this lecture is 4 domain controls, the main one and 3 replicas. But everything is in the same site. I have one global catalog and the rest are actual what domain controls. So we'll see you guys in our next lecture. For now, bye. All right. All right, folks, let's continue. In this section, we're going to be working with Active Directory sites and services. So let's take a look and see what's going on here. Watch this. So when I log on, everything is under the same site, right? Let's take a look and see. So I'm actually going to go to where? Tools, Active Directory sites and services, then sites. And look, I have the default first site name. See that? So I'm going to right click the default first site name, choose rename, all right, and call this NY. Then I'm going to create another site. So I'm going to right click sites, new site, and call this what? CT, using IP as a transport protocol. Then okay, and then okay. So now I have NY, right? And I have what? CT. But check this out. All the servers are actually under where? NY. So I have to right click on CT, move to CT, and move CTDC2 to what? To CT. So I just created the other site and I moved the domain controllers to the corresponding sites, right? Now, my next step is to configure the subnets. What network is each site on? I'm going to right click and choose new subnet and say, let's say New York is on the 192.168.100.0 network. See that? And then I'm going to say that Connecticut is on the 200 network, 192.168.200.0 slash 24. And this is for Connecticut. Then okay, right? So look, the protocol that we're using is of course IP. Look at this. By default, there's a site link. A site link is like a line, a dedicated line between two different locations so they could talk to each other, right? And if I double click this, look what it says. All of them are actually in the site link. But if I wanted to create one manually, I could just right click and choose new site link. See, there's something called a bridge. We'll see what that is. And I'll say this is actually NYCT, and NY and CT is in the list. Then okay. And I could delete the default one. See that? If I double click this site link, I could actually change the schedule and say how often it's going to replicate from one site to another, right? But look at this. If I right click, there's a site link bridge. A site link bridge, I have to have at least three sites. Let's say I have NY, CT, and NJ, and I want to go from NY to NJ. I could use a site link from NY to CT, CT to NJ, so now I can connect from NY to NJ directly, just like an actual bridge, right? To save on bandwidth. But today you don't actually use that because internet is kind of cheap and speed is super fast. And this is not something common that you would use. For now, I have two domain controls on the each site, and guess what? I want to make sure all of them are actually global catalog servers. So when I properties, it is a global catalog, all right? I'm going to make sure this one is also a global catalog server. So I'm going to put a check mark in the box. And same thing, I want to make sure I have at least two global catalog servers per a site. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one over here. I'm going to put a check mark in global catalog. See that? So I have two GCs per a site, and I specified the network. I created the site link. There is something called a bridgehead server. If I don't configure a bridgehead server, look at this. When I click on NTDS settings here, look, I could replicate from any domain controller. Imagine if I have 10 over here. Imagine 10 domain controllers replicating to all 10 domain controllers between NY and CT. No, just want one main one. So I want to have all the domain controls in New York to replicate to one in New York, then only that one in New York will replicate to a main one in Connecticut. That domain control is called a bridgehead server. That's going to be accepting the replication. So internally, they could all replicate to each other, but externally, intersite, which is from one site to another, I just want the bridgehead servers to do the replication so I could minimize on bandwidth. How do I do that? Look, I'm going to make NYDC1 if I go properties here, right? So this service preferred a bridgehead server, just like that. And if I go to CTDC1, this is also going to be the bridgehead server. And how can I prove that? Look at this. When I go into TDS settings here, I could replicate to all of them. So if I did everything right, this should be gone from the list, right? And CTDC1 should not see NYDC2. CTDC1 should only see NYDC1. NYDC1 should only see CTDC1, which is just the bridgehead server. NYDC2 should only see what? NYDC1. Okay. And that's how we could test replication later on. That's what a bridgehead server is. But I need to change the networks. I need to do routing. I need to set up also DNS on multiple servers because I want to have at least two DNS servers per a physical location. But if I go back to Active Directory users and computers, and I refresh over here, watch this, I could see the actual sites and I could see they're actually all what? Global catalog servers. So what I'm going to do in my next lecture is change the actual network, do routing, and then configure DNS and then test and forth replication. So we'll see you folks in another section in a moment. All right, for now, bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mo again. So, in this lecture, what we're going to be doing is changing the actual subnets and configure routing. So, watch this. New York is going to be on the 100 network. So, let me go back to Server Manager, right, and change the actual IPs first. And then I'll do actually routing. And we did that earlier. So, let me go to the properties. IP version 4. So look at this. Look what I'm going to do here. This one is going to be 192.168.100.1. Let's assume the gateway is 100.254. And of course, DNS will be 100.1. This is in New York, right? That's for NYDC1. So I'm going to go to NYDC2, and that's going to be 100.2, right? So this will be 100.2. Let me just log on. So this will be 100.2 and DNS will be what? 100.1, right? It will be 100.1. Then Connecticut will be on the 200 network, right? That's what we're going to do. Connecticut will be on the 200 network itself. So let's give this a moment. Let's make this as 100.2. Let's go to the network settings right over here and see how this actually works out for us. Properties. And 100.2. Let me just change this to 100.2. Number. All right. 100.2. Looks like it got stuck. Let me see. Let me close this and open again. Okay. 1 second. 192.168, 100.2. Gateway is 100.254. And of course, DNS will be 100.1. Then okay. Then close. Then I'm going to go to CT this time. CT DC1 will be 200.1. All right. Will be 200.1. But at the beginning, I'm going to make sure that DNS is still pointing to where? To New York, because we're going to be establishing routing anyway. Then we'll be actually switching all that because we're going to have multiple DNS servers. So let's wait for server manager. But then I just want to make sure they could all talk to each other, even though I put them on different networks. But I'm going to be configuring routing, of course, static routing. That's what I'm going to be actually doing. So let me go to the network sections here, and this is going to be 200.1, right? So this is 200.1, 192, and let's go back. 168, 200.1, gateway 200.254, right? So my default gateway is 200.254. 1 second. Gateway is 200.254. So let me make this 200.1 again. Gateway is 200.254. And DNS, look at this, is 100.1. Okay? Is 100.1 for now. And same thing, I'm going to go on my CTDC2 and log on. And this will be 200.2, right? And DNS will be 100.1. So let's give this a moment. Right. Because in the real environment, every location has to be on a different network, folks, right? It has to be on a different network. So let me go to local server and go to my network settings over here. Let's go right over here to the properties and see how this actually works out for us. And this will be 200.2. 192, 168, 200. Well, it's a big number. All right. 1 second. 192.168.200.2. And gateway is 200.254, and DNS is pointing to server 100.1. So what I need to do right now is routing. Why not start with this side over here? Let me just refresh and take a look and see what number I have over here. 200.2. So I need to add the 100 network to the routing table over here, right? Let me just go and change the actual fonts. 36 color screen text green. All right, so you could actually see better. So if I do route add space, I'm going to add the 100 network here, right? Space mask, space the default mask, space the IP address of the machine that I'm actually on, which is 200.2, negative P for a persistent route. That's all. All right. And then I'm going to go to CT DC1 and do the same thing. This is 200.1, right? So let me go to the properties on this one. Font. Let me just change this and the color. So route, add 192.168.100.0, space the word mask, space the subnet mask, space 192.168.200.1. That's a machine that I'm actually on, minus P. Then I'm going to go back to NYDC1, open the command prompt, right? And let me just change the fonts too over here. And 36 colors green. And let's do CD/CLS, right. So route, look at this. If I do IP config over here, I can see my IP is 100.1. So I'm going to add the 200 network, route add 192.168.200.0. 255.255.255.0 space the IP address of the machine that I'm on, space minus P, right, for a persistent route. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on NYDC2. CMD. And let me just modify this over here. Colors, text, and green. So route, add 192.168, 200.0, space mask, space the subnet mask, space the IP address of the machine that I'm actually on, which is 100.2, space minus P. They should all talk to each other right now. So if I try to ping 192.168.200.1, I should be able to reach it. See that? They could talk to each other. 200.2, I could reach. They could talk to each other. So what I did is I actually changed the networks and I configured routing. Now they could all talk to each other because of routing. My next lecture is going to be about installing DNS. I want to make sure they're all running DNS servers because I need to have at least two per a site. So I'm going to be storing the zone in Active Directory so the zone gets replicated to all the DNS servers. So we'll see you folks in another lecture in a moment. For now, bye. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Mo again. Well, in this lecture, what we're going to be looking at is installing DNS on the rest of the servers. And I want to make sure they're actually hosting the zone. So in other words, I'm going to be storing the zone in Active Directory. So if I go to Tools on my main server and go to DNS and right-click the zone, Properties, Change, I'm going to store it in Active Directory. We're going to see this again when we cover the DNS section. Then OK, then OK, then OK, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to DC2, add DNS. Same thing, I'm going to go on the third and the fourth one to make sure DNS is actually running. So here's DNS. I'm going to go next, 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 and install. And same thing right over here. I'm going to be installing DNS on the rest of the servers. So I can have multiple DNS servers per a site. So my clients can be pointed to more than one in case one fails. And that's actually good for load balancing too, right? As I said, DNS will be covered in our next section. So we're going to look at it in more details. For now, I'm just setting up DNS on these servers. So if I go back here, let's see, NYDC2, let's say. We could actually test it on this server for now. Let's see how this actually works out for us. Waiting for DNS to finish. And we're going to see if the zone gets populated or not under DNS. That's what I'm looking for. So it's almost finishing up. Let's see. Let me look at a full screen actually. All right. And this should be finishing up soon. And if I know it's working, when I open DNS, I should actually see the zone, right? I see the zone udemy.local. That's what I need to see. If I see that, that means everything is working. And that's it for sites and services, as you see. As I said, it's not something that you probably ever work with, unless you're working for a company that has multiple locations. That's when you deal with sites and services. So let me expand this forward. Oh, there you go. I have it. So I'm actually in good condition, right? And then all the servers will actually get it populated too. So in other words, what I need to do, let's say, for example, on this server, just to show you, I need to go to the properties of my network settings. And right over here, I'm going to put my alternate is myself. And I need to go to server one, NYDC1, go to my network settings, and make sure my preferred is pointing to server two and alternate is myself. So this is server two. And I would do the same thing in where? In Connecticut, and this is 100.1, just like that. So that's it most likely for Active Directory sites and services. If I wanted to force replication, I would do it from sites and services. I would expand servers, expand here, force replication from which server to which server. Look, I mean, I'm showing over here, everything looks good. You know why? Watch. I don't see CTDC2. This is a bridgehead server. So if it's a bridgehead server, I could talk to everything internally and only to the bridgehead from another site. So this is perfect. If I expand DC2 over here, I don't see Connecticut. This only should talk to whatever is actually in New York intra-site, which is internal. If I expand Connecticut, I would see the same thing. See, it just takes time to replicate, but you see how it's working? So this is actually perfect. If I want to force replication, I could just right click, replicate now, or from the command prompt, repadmin sync all, right? So that's it for sites and services. Our next section will be DNS, a very popular subject. It's like the backbone of an actual organization. So we'll see you later, folks, in another section. All right, for now, bye.